In November 2025, Angola marked 50 years of independence. Portugal's own president sat in the audience. In his speech, Angola's president used the moment to call the colonial era, in his words, the colonialism that enslaved his people. Back in Lisbon, a Portuguese political party demanded he apologize instead for saying it in front of their head of state. For most of the 20th century, Portugal did not call Angola and Mozambique colonies. By law, since 1951, they were overseas provinces, an integral, inseparable part of a single Portuguese nation spanning 3 continents. Independence wars broke out in Angola in 1961 and Mozambique in 1964. Both were still being fought in 1974, when a nearly bloodless military coup in Lisbon itself, 4 deaths, soldiers handed carnations by crowds, overthrew the government that had spent 13 years insisting these wars were not colonial wars at all. 1951, Portugal repeals its Colonial Act. By 1953 law, colonies become overseas provinces. 1961, armed struggle begins in Angola. September 25, 1964, Mozambique's Frelimo launches its own armed struggle, declaring that armed struggle is the only way the Mozambican people will achieve freedom. April 25, 1974, the Carnation Revolution topples Portugal's 48-year dictatorship in Lisbon. September 7, 1974, the Lusaka Accord hands full power to Frelimo, with independence set for June 25, 1975. No elections held. January 15, 1975, the Alvor Accord brings Portugal and Angola's 3 rival movements, the MPLA, FNLA, and UNITA, into a single transitional government. Within weeks, that government collapses into fighting between them. November 11, 1975, Angola's independence arrives with a civil war already underway. 1975-76, roughly 500,000 Portuguese settlers flee to Portugal as retornados. Angola's civil war, drawn out by Cold War intervention, Cuban and Soviet backing for the MPLA, Zairian Chinese, American, and South African backing for its rivals, does not end until 2002. The Estado Novo's own legal doctrine held that Angola and Mozambique were not colonies to be granted independence, but provinces of the same multiracial, multicontinental nation, a status written directly into Portuguese law, specifically to blunt international pressure to decolonize. That doctrine did not survive contact with its own soldiers. Officers who had fought the war for over a decade concluded, in the words of one of their own leaders, that no military victory was possible, and toppled the government that had sent them. Even today, the reckoning is incomplete. In 2024, Portugal's president said the country must pay the costs of its colonial crimes, while also calling an outright apology the easy part, something short of one. For the MPLA and Frelimo, the war was never a provincial dispute. It was, in Frelimo's own words, an armed struggle for freedom, justice, and social welfare against a colonial regime. That framing has outlasted the war itself. At Angola's 50th anniversary in 2025, with Portugal's president in attendance, President João Lourenço used the occasion to name the colonial era as enslavement rather than administration, a reminder that, from Luanda and Maputo's side, overseas province was never anything but a name for the same colonial relationship. Notice the 2 different wars that actually ended here. For Portugal, the war ended almost overnight, a domestic coup, 4 deaths, and within about a year, every one of its African wars was over by treaty. For Angola, the war did not end. It changed shape. Independence in November 1975 opened directly into a civil war between the same 3 movements that had just shared a transitional government, fed by Cuban and Soviet weapons on one side and Zairian Chinese, American, and South African weapons on the other. That war ran for 27 more years. The Empire's war lasted 13 years and ended the moment it became unbearable for the country fighting it from the outside. The Colonies' war lasted 41. This series has already asked where history begins, who counts the dead, what history is made of, who decides what a gesture means, who decides when it's time to ask a settled question again, and which authority The ballot or the court, history should believe. Portugal's empire adds one more. A war can be declared over by the country that no longer wants to fight it, while the war goes on for decades in the country it was fought inside of. Next time, another European empire, another jungle war it insisted it could still win, right up until a single battle at a valley called Dien Bien Phu ended the argument. The First Indochina War.